All right, today we're cracking open a page of the Talmud. That's this ancient, massive Jewish legal text, to explore a question that honestly feels super modern. When does a physical thing become sacred? And maybe more importantly, what happens when that sacred thing starts to fall apart? We're going to see how, for one tradition, holiness is something you can literally hold, and what it means when it starts to break down.
So, let's get right to the heart of it. How perfect does a holy object really need to be? Is it an all or nothing kind of deal? Is something either perfectly sacred, totally whole, or is it just, broken junk? Is there any room in between? This whole debate is this amazing window into where we draw the line between physical wholeness and spiritual meaning.
So the object at the center of this whole conversation is something called tefillin. You might have heard them called by their Greek name, phylacteries. Basically, they're these small black leather boxes, and inside they hold these tiny handwritten scrolls with verses from the Torah. Observant Jews wear one on the arm and another on the head during weekday morning prayers. And you're about to see the way these things are made is, well, it's incredibly precise.
Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the physical structure of these tefillin. Because in this way of thinking, holiness isn't just some abstract idea floating around. Nope, it's literally built piece by piece right into the object. The actual architecture of the box is part of what makes it holy. And this is where it gets really interesting. The tefillin for the head isn't just one empty box. Not at all. It's meticulously built with 4 separate little compartments inside, and each one of those holds a different, specific passage from the Torah on a tiny scroll. This separation is absolutely crucial. Think of it like a physical representation of 4 distinct ideas all brought together in one single unified object. Okay, so that's the ideal. But what happens when that perfect design starts to, well, break down, from age or just wear and tear? This is where the text stops being a dusty old rule book and becomes this living, breathing debate between ancient rabbis who are trying to figure out the exact breaking point of holiness. So the debate kicks off with 2 totally different ways of looking at it. First up, you've got Rav Huna. He's basically saying, hey, as long as the outside of the box looks okay, we're good. It's all about that outer integrity. But then Rav Hizda comes in and says, whoa, not so fast. It's the inside that matters. For him, a tear or 2 in the inner walls is fine. But if 3 of them go, the whole structure is compromised and the tefillin are no longer valid. And then, just when you think they've got it figured out, the debate gets even more specific. Another rabbi, Rava, jumps in to refine Rav Hizda's rule. He says, okay, 2 torn walls can be fine, but there's a catch. They can't be next to each other. See, if 2 walls that share a corner tear, you end up with 1 big chamber instead of 2 small ones. And that, he says, is a deal breaker. It's this incredibly precise, almost architectural way of thinking about what makes something holy. And this next part just shows you how practical this whole conversation was. The rabbis actually had a physical test to tell the difference between new and old tefillin. See, with old supple leather, if you pull it, it springs right back. A tear there might just be from age. But new leather is stiff. If you pull it and it stays stretched out and it's torn, that suggests a real defect from the get-go. I mean, you can just picture them, right? Holding the object, feeling the leather, making a judgment based on touch, not just theory. So this brings us to the human side of the whole thing. I mean, it's one thing for an object to just wear out over time, but what do you do when you're the one who has to decide how or even if it can be fixed? And the Talmud gives us this perfect real-life scenario. A student named Abaye is sitting there learning with his teacher, Rav Yosef, when, snap, the strap on his tefillin breaks. So now he's got this immediate practical problem. He asks his teacher, hey, can I just tie it back together? It sounds like such a simple question, right? But the answer is anything but. And Rav Yosef's answer is pretty incredible. He quotes the verse from the Torah, and you shall bind them, and he pulls this core principle out of it. He says the binding has to be a kashira tama, which means a complete binding. In other words, you can't just do a quick, shabby repair. It has to be whole. It has to be perfect. It even has to be beautiful. The big takeaway here is that a repair isn't just about making it work again. It's about restoring the dignity and the integrity of the object itself. So you might be asking, why such a high standard? Well, it's because tefillin fall into a special category called tashmishei kedusha, or articles of sanctity. Think of it this way. Some objects are just tools you use for a holy act, but these objects, like a Torah scroll or tefillin, have holiness baked right into them. They are holy in and of themselves. And because of that, they demand a whole different level of care. Imperfection just isn't an option.
Okay, now we're going to shift focus a little, from the straps to what is arguably one of the most significant parts of the tefillin, the knot. And look, this isn't just some practical knot to keep it on your head. The way the Talmud talks about it, this knot is a direct physical link to the moment of revelation at Mount Sinai.
So get this. The text says the specific shape of this knot is a law given to Moses at Sinai. This isn't something that was improvised or designed later, it's an ancient tradition. The knot for the head tefillin is actually shaped like the Hebrew letter dalet. The one for the arm is shaped like the letter yod. And even the way it's worn is specified. The decorative black side has to be facing outwards for everyone to see. All right, so this is where it all comes together. We're about to zoom way out from all these tiny, meticulous details, the torn walls, the quality of the leather, the shape of the knots, to see the big picture. How does this little black box become a message for the entire world? The Talmud quotes this really powerful verse from the book of Deuteronomy. It says that when all the nations of the land shall see that the name of the Lord is called upon you, they will be afraid of you. Now, afraid here probably doesn't mean terrified. It's more like a deep sense of awe or reverence. So the big question is, what is this visible name of the Lord they're talking about? And here it is, the incredible interpretation from Rabbi Eliezer the Great. He says that verse, it's not a metaphor. He says it is literally talking about the tefillin on the head. That's right, this small black box, with its scrolls and its sacred knot, is the tangible name of the Lord that's visible to the world. But wait, it gets even more mystical. The text takes it one step further. You know that famous story where Moses asks to see God's glory, and God says, "You can only see my back"? Well, the Talmud asks, what did Moses actually see? And the answer they give is that God showed Moses the knot of the tefillin. Think about that. The idea is that the closest a human being can get to perceiving the divine is through the physical perfection of this sacred, man-made object. And finally, to bring it all home, even the exact placement of that knot on the head is packed with meaning. It has to be above, on the back of the head, not down on the neck, to symbolize that the people of Israel should be above and not below. And it has to be towards the front, as a symbol of being at the forefront, not lagging behind. The physical object, placed on the body, literally becomes a kind of blueprint for the destiny of a people.
So we end up right back where we started, but hopefully with a much deeper way of seeing things. From the integrity of its tiny inner walls to the beauty required in its repair, all the way to the divine blueprint of its knot. The tefillin show us how a tradition can take its most profound ideas and give them real physical form. And that leaves all of us with a pretty big question to think about, right? In our own lives, whether they're religious or not, how do the physical things we care about and the standards we hold them to give shape to what we believe most deeply?